Welcome, welcome, friends. Thank you for joining. Got some more people. We'll wait just a couple minutes, make sure we get everybody that has said they were going to join some time to hop on. Hi, Sophie. Say hi in the chat, everybody. We love to keep the chat going.
Hi. I guess I don't have to use the chat. I have speaking privileges. Hi.
Everybody does, really.
I guess
we can let everybody talk. But... All right, we're a little after 10 here, so I'm sure people will still join us, but we'll get started. Welcome, welcome. As I said before, we are excited to have everybody here and excited that you're interested in our topic today about customizing WordPress for your content needs. You probably heard when you joined, we're recording. So just to remind you of that today, and we will be able to send this to you afterwards. And if you're not already familiar with Pixo, which I feel like I know so many names in the audience already, which is great, but Pixo is a software consultancy in Champaign-Urbana, and we create custom websites, software, and applications that address unique challenges. I'm Danielle, I'm the account executive for Pixo, and I'm really happy and honored to help facilitate today. You're going to get lots of information, hopefully, and spark lots of interest. So please, as the conversation keeps going today, keep it going in the chat. We love to honor questions at the end. So as we get started, I'm going to have Jenna introduce herself next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jenna. I'm the account coordinator here at Pixo. So I'll be handling the details today. I'll be putting helpful information into the chat for you as Lindsay talks through her presentation. As Danielle mentioned, if you do have questions throughout the presentation today, you are welcome to share those in the chat when they pop into your head. I'll make sure to see them so Lindsay doesn't have to monitor the chat, and I'll interrupt her if it's relevant at the moment. But I'll try to hold on to those and save until the end. If you'd rather ask your questions directly, we are going to have lots of time for a Q&A at the end of the presentation today. So you can talk live to Lindsay Markle. And then if a question comes up after the webinar, or if you'd like to connect with Danielle or Lindsay after our time together today, you're welcome to reach out to us. I am going to be sending a follow-up email with that recording that Danielle mentioned earlier, as well as some links to some other helpful things that Lindsay's going to talk through today.
Awesome, thanks, Jenna. And I'll do a quick shout out if any of you saw the LinkedIn post. I did put on here a special guest, Jason Rambeck. He is joining us today from Pixo, senior consultant and lead web developer. He's our go-to person for all the tech stuff when it comes to WordPress questions. So we wanted to make sure we included him for any Q&A today. And as you know, Pixo is a team. It takes more than one person to build a great website. So I would like to, last but not least, turn this over to Lindsay Markle, our senior content strategist, to get started on our topic today.
Hi, thank you. Thanks, Danielle. Thank you, Jenna. Thank you, special guest Jason Rambeck, for being here. We're honored. And thank you, everybody, of course, for coming, signing up, attending. It's wonderful. It's cool to see everybody here. So this is a new webinar. I am sharing my screen. Yes. Okay. Everything you can see. Nice to meet you. This is a new webinar. It's essentially a case study on some work that we've done in customizing a WordPress multi-site. We'll get into what that means. So I'm really excited to be talking about this and working through this topic here today with you. So anything else? My name is Lindsay Markle. I haven't even said who I am. Hello, my name is Lindsay Markle. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a content strategist at Pixo, meaning I'm on the user experience and design team. And I've been a consultant at Pixo for 8 years in the spring, which is absolutely wild to me, but somehow it is true. At Pixo, we build websites, apps, and software that can help you meet your goals. And so to know what your goals are, you have to dig in, you have to ask some questions, then you have to do a lot of prioritizing. And prioritizing and asking those kinds of questions, to me, is really what content strategy and what I do is all about. And there are tons and tons of choices that go into what we do. And so that's really, to me, what the core of what we're talking about today is, making those choices, prioritizing. And so we'll talk about that going through this case study. And we often do this for higher ed. So the majority of the work that I've done at Pixo has been working on higher ed sites that are in WordPress. So extremely relevant for us here today. And if you work in higher ed, if you work with higher ed and build websites for higher ed organizations long enough, you start to see that the problems in higher ed websites really rarely vary. The problems are often shades of the same thing. The details vary, but the problems are often the same. So often we see issues like this with higher ed clients that come to us for help. So maybe they're not hitting their student recruitment or alumni engagement numbers that they'd like to see. They might have a clunky CMS that's hard to update, or it's just a little bit slow. Maybe you think your website is hard to navigate. People are asking questions that the answers are available on the site, but they're not getting there for some reason. You might have inconsistent branding, outdated content. We hate that. If you need help making your website accessible, of course, accessibility is really important in higher ed, making sure everyone can access the same information. Wrangling a lot of stakeholder opinions. We know this is big in higher ed, a lot of bureaucracy typically, or want a better way to handle data or internal processes for your website. And a lot of times people come to us and they're not sure what they need. And that's great. We love that because we can help. We're here to ask those questions. And one of the defining principles at Pixo, one of the reasons that maybe I've been here as long as I have been, because I appreciate this so much, is that we are not about selling you crap that you don't need. No feature, we're not going to push a feature on you that we don't think you actually need or that you won't use, because then, in part, honestly, then we have to build crap that we know that you won't use. And what is the point of that? We're all wasting everybody's time, money, energy. So the whole, we come in and we try to help uncover the needs of whatever you need. So your needs, your organizational needs, your audience's needs, and where those needs meet is really the sweet spot for content. And the content is where we begin when we start to design and then eventually build something. So this is all relevant to our topic today. Finding out what those needs are and then building based on those needs is really what we're all about, which is why we can even talk about this topic today. So we have these arms of what we do, 3 arms, I guess, great metaphor, that all fit into one another. So we do website design and development, custom app development, and then strategy and user experience. But the strategy and user experience part is typically a part of every project because of all these things I've been saying. We often build custom for organizations and the people that they serve. And so today we're going to be talking a lot about how strategy and the user experience part of this inform the design and the development of WordPress customizations for higher ed. I love how specific this topic is, truly. So the website design and development piece, we don't come in saying, all right, what do you want? Tell us what you want, tell us what to build. Because typically we're not working with web designers. People come to us because they need web designers, and we are the web designers. So we're customizing to those content needs. And there are, if you're using a WordPress site, then you probably know there are all sorts of plugins, there are widgets, there are tools that you can add to your site to get you close to what you want, maybe looks-wise, design-wise, but we want you to be thinking about the content that you're publishing. And is it strategic? Does it make sense? Who is it for? Is it accurate? Is it timely? All of those things. So that's why we're focusing on customizing WordPress as opposed to loading it up with plugins and widgets. So the case study. We're going to focus on this case study because it has a range of examples of customization. The multi-site platform for the University of Illinois College of FAA. So I mentioned that higher ed clients mostly have very similar problems with different details. And the College of Fine and Applied Arts is no different. They're very special, but their problems were not that unique. So they had separate sites for all their 7 programs. The sites were built with varying technology. So content authoring was a headache, tech support was a headache because nothing, was really the same. There was not a one-to-one among the content authoring on the sites. And they didn't have great visual or brand consistency between them. So in the College of FAA, Fine and Applied Arts, There's a wide breadth of topics in here. We've got landscape architecture, we've got art and design, we've got dance, we've got urban planning, urban and regional planning. So a wide breadth of different topics that are, that are of fields within the school. And so they wanted to have more visual consistency, brand consistency among them. And it was just sort of a missed opportunity, branding wise and messaging wise. Of course, the design, anything that we designed and developed needed to adhere to the brand guidelines of the university, which I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar with. And we always adhere to accessibility best practices. Of course, that's really important, as I mentioned, in higher ed, as I'm sure you know. So I'm going to sort of describe the project, and then I'm going to take a step back and talk about what I'm talking about. So we did discovery. The things I'm talking about is when I'm saying we dig in, we ask questions. We don't come in and say, all right, what do you want? We come in and say, what was your experience applying to this school? What other schools did you look at? We just have conversations with people for the most part, and we call this the discovery process. And the themes that came out of the discovery for the College of Fine and Applied Arts were that all those academic units had very similar content needs. You need faculty profiles, you need news, you need program information, a clear way for students to apply. The primary audience, thank goodness they were aware of this as we were coming in, that their primary audience is prospective students. I guess side note, sometimes we come into a project like this and people are like, well, our faculty are very important. And sometimes maybe they can be, but for the most part, your website is your 24/7 billboard, interactive pamphlet information hub for prospective students. So their primary audience was prospective students. However, because of the breadth of programs within the college, the interests, the demographics, the specifics of those audiences varied a lot. And as I mentioned, well, I guess you could also assume this, looking at what kind of college this is, they put a really high value on the individual expression of each school and department. They wanted each field to be able to shine in the design. So they didn't want some big monolithic, this is what everyone's homepage looks like, and too rigid. So this is sort of a nuance. These are some nuanced requests that we have here. Thank goodness. So what we did was create a WordPress multi-site. So these are multiple sites that share one code base. And the result of building a multi-site and giving them a multi-site, a solution, was more streamlined content authoring. Though the content authoring looks the same for everyone in their WordPress instances. They get consistency in that, but they also get flexibility. We could talk about the multi-site probably all day. We could all be here for 8 hours, and I'm sure you would all love that. So I guess I'm trying to get ahead of myself and say we're not going to share every detail of the multi-site, though it is fascinating. But I am going to dig into certain parts of it. So they get consistency. They also get flexibility in the content authoring piece. The metaphor that we kept using throughout this project was adult children, thinking of each of these sites as an adult, a grown child of a family, meaning they all share a core set of DNA. They all have similar characteristics, but each member has its own expression, and so the multi-site allows each department site to have a unique visual design that still adheres to the brand guidelines, still adheres to accessibility best practices. And it makes it easier for everyone to maintain their sites from a central hub. Everything that we built in this WordPress code base had to be general enough to fit in with a lot of content, or else be completely customized. If that sounds like Greek, I think it will make sense in a second when I go into these examples. So each site had access to the same core site of design elements, but we worked with each of the units to customize the look and feel and reach those unique audiences that they each have. And so within the multi-site, building the multi-site, we're building all of these modular pieces, some big, some small, or some big, some big, some small. What's the opposite of big? Some big, some small, maybe some medium, and lots of choices to make. And when we're thinking about making those kinds of choices, I like to return to a tenet of content strategy, which is your content is not for you. You don't put time, effort, money, into building a website just so you can look at the website and go, wow, I love my website. I love to look at my new beautiful website. I mean, maybe you do, and if you do, more power to you. I actually do love that for you. But usually we don't build a higher ed site, a college site, so that, say, the dean can look at the site every day and go, great job. We did a great job. We're doing it for prospective students. We're doing it so that you can recruit people. We're doing it so you can connect with alumni. Maybe we're doing it so faculty can find your intranet every once in a while. But for the most part, this is for your outside audiences. I skipped a slide, but I may go completely rogue and say I think we've covered everything on this slide. Here's a picture of me on the right from, I want to say 2015, doing a card sort. But I think we've covered strategy and user experiences core to what we're building and what we're thinking about here and how we make the choices that we make. Special guest Jason Rambeck, please jump in anytime you have something to say. Just you're free. You're free to speak whenever you want.
Thanks. This is all good.
Okay, cool. I can just check in with you every once in a while. Okay, so discovery phase. I mentioned how we dig in with clients, what we do. So the goals of a discovery phase, what are we looking for what are we looking to learn so that we can make decisions about how to customize something, whether it's in WordPress or not. So usually a discovery phase, the beginning of any project, we are looking at the current site, assuming that there is a current site, how much content is there, and what is the general quality of the content? Meaning, is it up to date? Is it necessary? Does anyone care about this? Who is this for? Is it necessary? Is it accurate? And is it, does it mean anything to anybody? We look at peer sites, so any schools that you may compete with, or just sites that you've seen that you, for whatever reason, think are really great. We look at peer sites, take notes, sort of dissect them and figure out things that we might want to borrow or things that we might want to stay completely away from, just to gain context of sort of field knowledge. We do interviews. Interviews are the heart of a discovery phase. Structured conversations with students, with faculty, with staff, alumni, audiences of your site, and also stakeholders within the organization, to just have real conversations and sort of, you can get to the heart of things pretty quickly when you're having good conversations with people, and then pulling out the themes from those conversations and from everything else we're doing in discovery. And ultimately the goal is to define who those target audiences are, what are their needs, and also what sort of information from the interviews and sort of meeting with stakeholders, what sort of information might you be wanting to express that the students or your audience members might not even be aware that they need. So we're trying to uncover those things. So for instance, if you're sort of you can do some self-reflection about some of the things that we'd be discussing in a discovery phase, or trying to uncover in a discovery phase. Like, what information is most important for prospective students? What actions are the most important for them to take on your site? And just like quick gut check, is it accurate? Is it up to date? When was the last time we looked at our program information? Can you sort of role play a prospective student who knows nothing about your site, Googling you and ending up on some random page? Can they use your navigation to find the information that you would want them to find quickly? What questions do prospective students and their parents are often like sort of like a subcategory of prospective students? What questions do they have? Do they ask you that the website should answer? Do you get phone calls? Do you get emails? That's sort of a real life signal that your website, maybe the navigation is a little clunky for folks, or they're not finding what they need. If people are coming to you with questions that are like, I know that's on the website and I thought it was pretty easy to find, that could be a red flag. And, really, if you look at your site right now, who is your site really for? Is it for your students? Is it for prospective students? Does it sort of speak to them? Does it call them in? Does it use language that they use? Or is it more for internal stakeholders? There's a lot of bureaucracy, as we mentioned, and we know that oftentimes in higher ed, it's like a bunch of voices saying, oh, this is the most important. Actually, this is the most important. This is the most important thing. And sometimes it's just easier to be like, all right, fine. We'll just put it all on the homepage, anything you want. And then that snowballs really quickly into a not friendly site for your audiences. Okay, here's my porridge, Jerry. Okay, so customizing. Okay, Goldilocks. All right. I catch up with my notes. Okay, so yesterday I posted on LinkedIn a sort of promo for this webinar, and I was like, you know, it's kind of a Goldilocks situation about customization. And then Jason Ramback messaged me and was like, I saw your Goldilocks thing. I hope you have bowls of porridge on your slides, or like, you know, icons of porridge. And when he said that, that made me realize that I wasn't really sure that I remembered what the Goldilocks story was actually about. I was like, porridge? Like, something about how hot the porridge is, maybe. And then I had to think about it. And now I don't really think this metaphor fits very well at all. But here's the porridge on my slides. So what this porridge represents is various pieces that we built for the multi-site. And you can see the bowls of porridge are growing in size. And that represents how these examples are going to grow in both the content size, the modular pieces, and also the level of customization. Okay, so actually this is the new Goldilocks. I don't know what Goldilocks is, something about just right. So like these are the just right levels of customization for these pieces. Yes, thank you. Okay, I'm starting with sort of a small piece, an example of a customized piece on the FAA multi-site. I'm going to talk about the content needs that got us there and how we customized it to meet them. So this is a mere component. So this is a component, a modular text block, super straightforward. And we have added image options and some simple layout options for those images. We've thought about accessibility considerations. So the content needs that sort of made us know that we needed to build this. Well, it's text. You need text on your website. Text is incredible on the web. This is gonna be the most used component on every site. From a content authoring perspective, we know that this is going to be the most used component on every site. This will be on almost every page, if not every page. And this is also going to be the type of component that people come in feeling comfortable with. You see a rich text block. If you've ever authored anything on the web before, if you've ever written an email, then you know this is the least likely component to make you go, oh my gosh, I'm afraid. I don't know how to do this. Someone help me. Tech support, tech support. So thinking about that, we keep it simple. But then we sort of like upgrade the text component a little bit. So this component can be placed on any page, any post type, pretty much anywhere, not technically anywhere, but for the most part, anywhere on any FAA site that we've created. And if you see over here on the right is what, or no, actually the opposite on the left. Over here on the left, you see this is what the author interface looks like. So this is also something that we think about. I mean, this is a big part of content strategy, or at least what I do at Pixo and what I do on these sites is think about what do we call these fields? What help text do we add to these fields? How do we guide the content authors in a way that they should be able to open, you know, create a text block and know what to do, not have to look up some PDF manual to figure out how to add text and image to their site. So we have just a classic rich text editor here. I mentioned accessibility considerations. So we do things like force a header on a text block and then give you the option to hide the header from view. If you're going, what? I don't blame you. So this is for accessibility reasons. Just knowing that headers are really important for accessibility. Accessibility devices, screen readers rely on headers in the code to be able to like parse what is this page about. Search engines are looking at these headers in the back end being like, all right, what are the topics on this page, and that's, you know, how Google is deciding, is this page relevant to you when you're doing a Google search? So we do want to, for accessibility reasons, force a header like that, but then make it an option to hide it from the visual, from the front end, from the visual view.
Lindsay, I'm coming in hot with an interruption here. We've got a relevant question. Is this a Gutenberg block?
Just yeah, I'm gonna go ahead, since Jason hasn't had a chance to talk much, I'm just gonna like have him answer that.
This is not a Gutenberg block. So we use ACF fields exclusively, and flexible content fields in particular for these kinds of what we call components. Gutenberg has, well, Gutenberg is the future, I guess, but we have some limitations with it in some of our more complex content components, just because of how it works with the options for layouts and stuff. Some of our components have tabs and they can get complex. So it's been hard to mix that with the sort of traditional Gutenberg layout. So that's sort of a technical answer to, how we do things in particular. I will just say too, this is really important here. This is the sort of foundational piece to, I guess, how we take our approach to building stuff out, which is it's really focused on the content needs. And components is, one kind of piece. We have other kinds of areas where we have custom fields or different ways to communicate or give authors the ability to communicate various information. And all that strategy piece that we do up front is really important to identifying, all right, is this, what kind of choices are we giving authors? Because it's always a fine balance between giving too many choices when you're creating content. Am I choosing colors? Am I choosing layouts? Am I choosing, this, so that we can make sure that the interface we build for our authors doesn't require them to be designers. They can really focus in on the content that's important, and we're sort of building that into the system. So that's kind of the way I look at this general concept of building, like our customizing WordPress or building these author interface pieces. Did that answer your question about the Gutenberg blocks, by the way? I mean, obviously it is not a Gutenberg block, but any other questions, maybe type them out or whatnot.
She verified that you answered it in the chat, so you're good. Cool. Special guest coming in handy.
Oh, so glad you're here. Truly I am. And actually, when Jason started talking, I felt like a wash of calm come over me. And I was like, wow, my energy, maybe I could take it down a notch, actually. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Special guest and therapist, Jason Rambeck. All right. Yeah. So as Jason was talking, this is all cuts. So I feel like this text block example, maybe you're not like, wow, I see how a strategy would lead to a rich text block on a website. This is just a necessary block for anybody. But figuring out like what the fields are. So we added an image. We added an image option to this text block. We may have done that from the start. I honestly don't remember, because clearly this is like one of the first things that we built. It also may have come from just knowing that from experience that when people add text, eventually people are going to be like, how do I added an image and there's like a lot of space underneath it or whatever, just knowing that folks are going to want to put images and text side by side. So there are just some really simple options when you add an image to this component, saying, do you want it to be a half size on whatever screen, whatever viewport you're looking at? Do you want it to be a half size? Do you want it to be smaller? Do you want it to be on the left or the right? So exactly what Jason was saying about not too many overwhelming options, so that we're asking you to design a website, but enough options that we know from experience and from testing and talking to people that they'll be happy with the flexibility that they're given. So that is text and image, smallest bowl of porridge. Okay, medium bowl of porridge. A post type. So a post type is templated content. If you think you don't know what a post type is, you're wrong. You do know what a post type is. It's templated content that you can create once, publish everywhere. It shows up on a listing page. So a news story is an example of a post type, an event, a faculty profile. And these exist in WordPress, right? So when we were doing research and discovery for the College of Fine and Applied Arts, I think the second site that we built was for the School of Architecture. And so the first site that we built was very basic. I think the components that we included were, what you were basically seeing, and what we would build for a lot of any sort of general WordPress site. And so we knew that as we went on, we would continue to add. Since this is all a shared code base, we assumed that we would be adding and learning more as we went on. So the second site that we built was the School of Architecture. Thank you, Jenna. And I did an in-person visit. Remember the days? I did an in-person visit to the school to interview some folks. And I saw so much visual work just literally pinned up on the walls. And as someone who has never, I'm an English major, I've never taken an architecture class. I was really unfamiliar with what the study of architecture might be in actual practice. I was really taken with all the visual work. And it really quickly sort of oriented me as to what the school is about, what kind of research they were doing, what they were producing. So, and then of course, we're working with the College of Fine and Applied Arts. So thinking, if the School of Architecture has visual work that they're going to want to highlight on their site and that we think we should highlight on their site, it's a pretty safe bet that there's going to be more visual work that people will want to display as we keep going through these Fine and Applied Arts websites. So it was sort of a common need. We knew it would get used in the multi-site. And so what you see on the left here is the peer review I mentioned. We'll look at peer sites and just see how other people do this. I mean, there is no shame in doing this. Why reinvent the wheel if people are already doing this well? Let's just see how they do it and see if we can adapt to our content needs and what the School of Architecture needs in the College of Fine and Applied Arts. So we're just looking at this is a screenshot of a Miro board that I had, 2 examples of sort of featured work that other schools and schools that FAA competes with or that they think of as competitors or peers that they feature on their websites. And those blue Post-its are me just sort of doing a high level educated guess at what those fields might be to see if we might need those fields on our thing that we were creating as well. Okay, so now on the left, you see the wireframe for the work post type on the far left, and then a published live work post on the right on the architecture site as it is now. So a work post highlights it can be project work, it can be research work, it can be creative work. As Jason mentioned, like we try to be really thoughtful about what we make required versus optional fields on the back end. This is sort of like maybe a not so obvious part of this, but it ends up being huge when we're designing these. It's really important because we don't want to lock people into something that's too rigid. If you require fields, I mean, in my experience, if you require a field, that is sort of tough for people. A classic example is you require an image to publish an event on your site. Well, not every event, some events are just going to be like, a happy hour or whatever, and there's not going to be some specialized image. So people end up using stock images. They just end up putting junk on their site because the field was required. And, we hate that, but I don't know, that's something that we see all the time. So we really try to be thoughtful about what is required versus what is optional. And so in this type of in a work post type on the multi-site, I think it requires the creator name. It does require a featured image because it is meant to be a visual medium. If you're writing a research paper, you probably would not use this. You have other components for that. But it does require a visual image and alt text for accessibility required. A brief summary, you could put a sentence or many paragraphs explaining the work. And then you can add, you see a lot of optional fields here. You can add related links along the side, or you can skip it to link to people's profiles, external websites, more work, a related event, whatever it is. And they can, you see the images sort of down at the bottom, they can add as many images as they want to create a slideshow for more visuals on these projects. And this is the work post type. Jason, do you have anything to say about it?
Yeah, I liked where you're going with the dealing with required fields. That's like, I think every web developer sort of asks, is this required or not? And when it comes to, again, we want the content to drive those decisions. And you use the event about events. For whatever reason, we're running this all the time, where it's like, oh, well, not every event has an image. Well, but featured events that are kind of big should have an image, right? And so we really want the author interface to drive those decisions and enforce it when we want to. But if it's truly optional, it's like, well, it doesn't really matter. And we know what, the event pages are going to look like if they're kind of sparse of images, and that's okay because most of them are not, featured or big name images, but the ones that are featured should have an image. We want to enforce that in the author interface, again, so that we are driving kind of the tone of the site and are using our understanding of what the messaging should be and the content should be. So I really think that we have 3 ways when it comes to especially these required fields, is It's either not required because it doesn't really matter. It is required because it is very important. And there's sort of a middle ground there where we can include what we call help text or instruction text within a field to guide a user on making a choice when it's sort of, they could do either, but we want to give them some context about how to make that choice. And that's always important too when we're building out an author interface. Sometimes sometimes you have to make those choices to sort of add some text for guidance. And so we want to be thoughtful about that sometimes when we're building out these interfaces. So.
Yeah, it's a balance. And sometimes I find when I go to write help text for something, and if I can't explain what the content author should do in like one sentence or less clearly, then we have a problem. Like we need to go back to the drawing board on how we've designed this thing because it's too confusing. Okay, big bowl of porridge. Major customization, completely customized on the College of FAA multi-sites are still customized homepage. So the homepages for each of the sites within the multi-site is a completely custom, I don't know, probably not technically from scratch, but like sort of functionally from scratch homepage. Design is completely custom. You can see, so these are 5 finished, published sites, homepages. So you can see the headers at the top. They have a consistent header. They link back to the College of Fine and Applied Arts website. So this is sort of, you might be able to see the sort of adults, children, grown children mindset that's coming through in the design. Something that I'd like to point out as content strategist that I found embarrassing might be too strong of a word, but eye-opening is I did not realize until we saw all of these side by side that the first 4 all have 3 words at the top. Something about the 3-word impact is like very compelling. And yet, you don't really see your patterns until they're laid out in front of you. So anyway, here are 5 the finished homepages. 3 is the magic number. Thank you, Jenna. Yes, famously in, oh, wow, I love it. Okay, so here are 5 live website homepages on the multi-site. You can see sort of they're all part of the same family, but they have their own visual characteristics. They are all within the university brand guidelines. Shout out to Tyler Edwards, who is not here, but who designed these the visuals of these homepages, who has managed to do so much within the University of Illinois. Colors, without making them all just orange and blue. We love orange and blue, but listen. Okay, so homepage, I wanted to give 2 examples of custom homepages within the multi-site. Sorry, my notes just like reloaded on their own, which was really exciting and fun. Okay, so this is the landscape architecture homepage. So what you see on the far left is, that's a wireframe. I consider that a wireframe. This is a content priority wireframe maybe. So I mentioned Tyler, the UI designer who worked on these sites on this team. He and I, after discovery, so I have a sense of what prospective students need and what the school is wanting to, or what the department is trying to convey. And so we get together and we just work really ugly. This is my favorite thing. So to just make text blocks where I'm like, all right, what I know about landscape architecture is a high school senior doesn't know what landscape architecture is. So when within the College of FAA, if you're interested in painting, that you're going to the art and design website and you know what you're doing, but you might not know that you're interested in landscape architecture. So if you end up on this website, how quickly can we convey what landscape architecture is and that field knowledge and what you'll actually be doing and studying? Or why would a young person be interested in this in the first place? So Tyler and I get together and we do something like what you see on the left, where I'll say, okay, this is the content that I know of that could go on the homepage. Let's talk about it. Let's order it together in priority order of what students, potential students, prospective students need to be seeing and what will get the message across to them. And then the design supports that content. So content first, we keep saying content first. Once we have an educated guess, a try at that content, then we start messing with design and it gets higher and higher in fidelity. And we, of course, I guess I've been taking this for granted, but we are meeting with the client, we're meeting with the stakeholders within within the department, of course, to check with them and see if this resonates with them, especially as that design gets higher and higher fidelity. Same problem. Landscape architecture and urban and regional planning had very similar content needs for those homepages. Like, what is this in the first place? And then sort of a different content need was for the School of Art and Design. The School of Art and Design, is much more maybe obvious to students. However, they have this breadth of programs within the school that may not be so obvious. And so they really wanted to highlight the breadth of programs within the school and make that really obvious from the get-go. So you can barely see it here, but thank you, Jenna. But if you go to the chat, you can see a link to the homepage. So we don't really waste any time saying, welcome to the School of Art and Design website. Art, what is art? Webster's defines art as, we get right down to it. We tell you what the name of the school is, and then we're like, and here are the programs. And there are these interactive tiles. The design is pretty great, I think. But they wanted to really give a compelling expression of what those programs were and what was available, because that's a great example of the kind of information that the organization has that students might not know that they need. We imagine, if someone comes to the art and design site thinking, I want to study painting, and then they scroll through and they're like, they have fashion design here or whatever else that they may not have even known. And then we can sort of open the door to them learning more on the site and pushing that content. Over on the left, the homepage. Okay, so filling out content for the custom homepages. This is what it looks like on the left here. You see that there are like different tabs on the left for the different sections. All of these fields and the help text is all custom because the fields, the homepages themselves are custom. And so I don't know if you see this help text, I'm trying to put some sort of messaging notes in there. So I always try to picture like 5 years down the line or whatever, they've hired, it's a whole new staff at whatever school we're working for. And, a grad student or an intern or whoever sits down with this form and they're like, what should I put here? I hope that the help text will speak to them in the future and help guide them. So putting some messaging notes, some notes on length, how much text should go here without being too prescriptive or too rigid. Jason Rambeck, anything to say about custom homepages?
Well, I mean, I love how it seems so important to put those things, this thing that you were talking about, giving this voice guide to how you should write even something like text, like an opening line here. So for those who can't read this, this opening line text says a punchy, very short text, about 50 characters or less, that introduces site visitors to the vibrant feel of the school, limit 75 characters. So oftentimes these, field help text says, just says limit 75 characters, but it's so valuable, again, especially over time. You get new people in, or even the people that have been editing the site, and the homepage might not be updated for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and you kind of it sort of builds into the site sort of guidelines and the intentions that you started off with and you all sort of decided on, instead of having to go back to maybe some documentation of, what was our intention for the homepage again? And maybe it's always clear, but sometimes it's not. And just putting in these little details can really be helpful over the term of the project to sort of keep, what your intentions were on the site, because, content changes on somewhat regular basis. And we've all seen it, how things can just change, and we do our best to kind of, not allow too many kinds of changes in the UI. We talked about required fields and not required fields, but sometimes just the text changes, and the text can change its voice or tone, and just having those guides there can be super helpful. So,
and I see the question about ACF from Matt in the chat. I wanted to mention, anytime you see like a limit, I'm really hard pressed to say like, hey, developers, I think we should put a limit, an actual limit. And the way I think about that, I think is just based on the design. It's like, if you put a paragraph of text up here where it says vibrant, illuminating, empowering, the design's going to get all wonky. It's not going to look good. You're not going to be happy. We're not going to be happy. So that's part of the flexibility part, is we're thinking really deeply about actually putting limits on that, because I can imagine it would be really frustrating to be like, typing what you think is the perfect text and it's not allowed. Notice also I did not put 3 words in any of these, although I could have. Matthew John Sharkey asks, where do those tabs come from, Jason Rambeck? Is that still ACF?
It's still ACF. Advanced Custom Fields is a common plugin, very popular plugin used for creating these kinds of layouts or author interface, especially for fields. So yes, we are. So our take for home pages in particular, but other sort of very custom pages sometimes are outside of the home page. We do this for as well. But we just have like it's basically an options page, or, you know, if you're in WordPress, and you know, it'll be an option or a panel in the sidebar there, where you just have all these different fields. And when it comes to a home page, which is usually the most customizable piece of a page, you know, it's obviously a very important page. It's usually people's first page that they visit on your site. You want to usually keep it fresh and up to date. So we either do that through automation by bringing in the latest news feed or the newest event or news item. But we also have several different approaches we can take. Again, it all sort of is driven by the needs of your content and what you're trying to do. Are you trying to get people to move into the site, to take an action, you know, to find content, you know, are we introducing, you know, search, you know, there on the homepage, or highlighting search? There's all kinds of needs that we could have. And then sometimes those needs change over time. So sometimes you have, you know, I don't know, a registration period or some sort of thing where you on the homepage, you want to put something new and different on there in October or some time of the month for a time frame. So then you want to start choosing between how flexible you want your homepage to be, and do you have basically things that you can toggle off and on. Sometimes you have more of a what I'm going to call a component or block level way to add these sections to your homepage, so that you can maybe move them around or change one section out for another. This particular thing that you're looking at didn't have that need, so all these sections are kind of fixed, but you can update the text and the images to keep things fresh. So again, that's all driven by these content, understanding the content needs and the goals of the website, and trying to make that, build in that flexibility just enough to meet those goals, but to also not have people to have to think too much and make a lot of decisions that really they don't need to make. We want to make those decisions for them, and that can be a tricky balance sometimes, but it usually is very, very helpful over the long term. So,
amen, amen. We're talking about a lot today. We're talking about a lot of technical details. We're talking about these content needs. We're really covering a lot in these, 40 some minutes that we've been talking. I just love to return to this core tenet of content strategy, and like why I care about this, why I think this is valuable for a lot of people, is that it's really scalable. You don't need, an entire redesign to get more value out, because we're talking about starting from audience needs. The core of what we're talking about is pretty simple. And it's just, maybe in practice, it's not simple, but the core thought is simple: of figure out what people need, and then try to get closer to what they need. So you can start where you are. You don't need to have like access to, be able to customize your own post type necessarily to get value out of thinking from a user experience and a content first mindset. Pixo, just shout out to Pixo, I guess, at the end. Thank you for attending. You presumably follow us on LinkedIn because you're here, but if you don't, please do. We post a lot of common sense tips, blog posts, webinars. We do this a lot, some free webinars talking about different things, different disciplines within Pixo. And I don't know, I'm really glad you're here. Higher ed projects are a really good fit for Pixo because they have like clear missions. They're focused on like optimism, doing good, and putting good things out into the world. So they're a great fit for us. We love working on these kinds of projects, in case you can't tell. And we're happy to just meet you wherever you are and see if we can help if you're interested in that. Either way, thank you so much for attending today. It's great to see so many people here. And wow, shout out to all of you. And a special guest, Jason Rambeck. Thank you.
That was excellent, Lindsay. Thanks, Jason. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Jennifer saying, if you ever do a presentation for developers, I love hearing what people want to know from us. And so just keep them coming. Let us know what would be helpful for you. And we'll see how we can make things possible for future webinars. We're happy to answer more questions. I know everybody was great about throwing some stuff in the chat when they thought of them, but we're still here for a few minutes if anybody does have more questions.
I love that idea to do ACF webinar. As we're chatting, I was like, wow, there's really so much here. I mean, we could do a whole webinar just about like required fields. There's so much to talk about.
I was going to mention and hype up Lindsay, Jason, and Tyler will be doing a panel discussion sort of about this topic and more for the Champaign Public Libraries webinar series. That'll be in the first week of December. And if you'd like to hear about that, I know Champaign Public Library is posting info about it. It's December 1st at noon, and it'll be online. And we'll be talking about this stuff and more. And there'll be lots of opportunities to ask and answer questions there. And I'm sure there'll be a lot more folks there from other industries. So it won't be as higher ed focused, but definitely more information.
A lot to dig into.
All right.
Ooh, we got a question.
We got a question.
Any general advice for using aggregated, non-fixed content in places like the homepage, stuff like latest news stories or upcoming events?
Advice from or maybe J. Ray has an answer.
Well, yeah, speak more on that.
Sure.
Yeah, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, Matt.
Hi.
Hi, Matt.
Time caller, long time listener. Yeah, so I wonder about that, really structured homepage that you have, how you make room in there for things like latest blog post or event things from our calendar. Do you worry about devoting space to those, or toggling them on and off when you build that sort of prioritized homepage?
Yeah, it's usually about deciding between how much is just automated, how consistent we think the content is. Like events, for instance, is something that it's not uncommon to not have any upcoming events, for instance, right? News always has past news, so that's not usually as big an issue, but events is, some organizations always have events, but building in basically, so a couple of different ways that you can approach this is, like if you do want to highlight events, and events are important on the homepage, showing events, there's the considerations that you would have are, hey, we don't want to show, any event, we only want to show events with images. So we kind of get back to that discussion about should events have images? Well, maybe we require images, but if we're going to show them on the homepage, we only want to show ones that have events. And so we can automate the homepage so it pulls in the most recent event, or maybe event tagged as highlighted or something like that. So there's different ways that you can sort of think through, all right, how can we automate this so we don't have to think about it? The homepage stays fresh, but it also won't show, some sort of, office hours event or something that is not very important to show on the homepage, and keep things sort of automated and fresh on the homepage. The other option, of course, is to make it manual. And we've done that when it calls for that, where basically you have to go into the homepage settings and say, all right, highlight this event. Or it could be even a little bit more sophisticated in that, you can maybe change up, show highlighted events, or show or a specific event. And we've done multiple different ways where you can say show highlighted events, but you know what? You can also have the option to, instead of pulling in the highlighted events, show a specific event that, maybe isn't always the recent or most upcoming one, but is very important, and do it that way. So there's a lot of options, and it can be daunting sometimes to think through. That's probably one of the more complex examples, but that's the sort of example that comes to mind. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
No.
Yeah. And I mean, even as Jason's talking, there's like these alarm bells going off in my head of like, wait, but I mean, Matt knows this obviously, but like if we set something, so a content author, someone on the back end has to mark certain events as eligible to show up on the homepage, someone has to know that that's their job, and someone has to actually do that, or else you know, what's the point? The whole thing's busted and nothing ever gets featured. And that, you know, that's all part of the dance of creating an interface, is balancing the needs and what people think they want. And then it's like, okay, but who's going to actually do that? Are you going to be the one that's going to log in every day and mark these things? Just making sure that it's something they can actually maintain in the future.
Yeah, and that goes back to help text and being very thoughtful about the author interface to make those things very clear, right? That's a very common thing to just build an author interface. We all know what it's doing because we're building it. Even the people we're building it for are kind of involved in that, but we have to think about the people who are not with us right now, or think about our future selves 6 months from now when we've not touched the homepage and don't remember how this stuff works. And yeah, if you have an event and a way to show an event on the homepage, make sure it's clear. It says toggle to show this event on the homepage, or make it available for the homepage or something, instead of just saying highlighted or featured or something. Make it very explicit that's what it is. So again, we're trying to build something for that will be useful for a long time down the road for our future selves, for new people, and make it really easy to use and helpful.
Mm-hmm. I think part of the delicate dance too is knowing or learning long-term that people are going to misuse the things that you build. This is probably a whole webinar in and of itself too, but like, it's just incredible sometimes. And I'm saying this with no ill will, but like sometimes we look at the site and it's like, oh, it's really kind of amazing how they managed to use that component that we built to do something completely different that they wanted to do. It's very creative of them. So, you know, checking back in with the things that we've built, sort of, if we have time in the future to go back and clarify anything, or I don't know. It's yeah, now I'm thinking, wow, we could really do a webinar on like how people have used things that we built in ways we did not intend.
I love how these conversations spark new webinar ideas. So just from you saying it out loud, but also Jennifer saying a few things that I've jotted down as well for future stuff.
Got
this
legs.
Is great. Well, we are about out of time, so I just wanted to say thank you again for everybody joining today. It is an honor that you could have spent the last hour having conversation with us and hearing how excited Pixo is about our different topics. It's just a joy and a pleasure to be able to do that with you. Be on the lookout for a follow-up email from Jenna with more information. And if you do want to reach out directly and ask some more questions, you know, feel free. We're open for that. And I think Jenna will include contact information in there as well. So thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, enjoy your Thursdays.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.